Betty Ford was a woman of openness and honesty, an unexpected gift to America at a time of political turmoil. In 1974, as scandals destroyed Richard Nixon's administration,
I, Gerald R. Ford, do solemnly swear that
Gerald Ford made the unlikely leap from congressman to president.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
I am indebted to no man, and only to one woman, my dear wife.
Betty Ford made her own unlikely leap from obscurity as a Michigan mother and housewife to First Lady.
I told my husband, if we have to go to the White House, okay, I will go. But I'm going as myself, and it's too late to change my pattern. And if they don't like it, then they'll just have to throw me out.
Betty Bloomer grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. At 20, she moved to New York City, where she danced with famed choreographer Martha Graham's troupe at Carnegie Hall. At her mother's urging, she returned to Grand Rapids, where she married an old school friend. The marriage didn't last, and in 1947 she met a Grand Rapids lawyer, Gerald Ford. They got married just before he was elected to Congress in 1948. In a 60 Minutes interview with Morley Safer in 1975, she made it clear the White House had not changed her.
You can ask me any question. I'm perfectly happy to answer and give you my idea, and I'm sure my husband won't mind at all.
She was frank, even if her views did not seem in keeping for the wife of a Republican president. He opposed the Equal Rights Amendment.
The Equal Rights Amendment is a necessity of life.
She supported it.
We kid about it, and I often say, well, I can remember well, there was a time when we couldn't even vote, so.
Good evening. In a landmark ruling, the Supreme Court today legalized abortions.
She applauded the Supreme Court decision on Roe v. Wade.
I feel very strongly that it was the best thing in the world when the Supreme Court voted to legalize abortion and, in my words, bring it out of the backwoods and put it in the hospitals where it belonged. I thought it was a great, great decision.
She talked about things that in the 1970s were often taboo, like seeing a psychiatrist.
I was a little beaten down, and he built up my ego.
She accepted that her 18-year-old daughter might have premarital sex.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. I think she's a perfectly normal human being, like all young girls.
She even hinted at life in the White House bedroom when asked about the president admiring other women.
When he stops looking, then I'm going to begin to worry. But right now he still enjoys a pretty girl, and he really doesn't have time for outside entertainment because I keep him busy.
Her willingness to talk about anything had already earned her credit for saving lives. Weeks after moving into the White House, she was diagnosed with breast cancer and had a mastectomy. At a time when most did not speak about such things publicly, Betty Ford did.
I'll never forget the day that I was told I would have to have a mastectomy. My reaction to the words was total denial.
She used her experience to urge other women to get examinations.
You came out and discussed breast cancer at
Though, as she told Leslie Stahl of 60 Minutes in 1997, it did take some nerve.
Well, it was gutsy the first time I appeared at a state dinner and I walked down those stairs and I just knew all eyes were upon me and they were probably saying, which one did they say it was?
While her forthright words offended some, the more she talked, the more popular she became. More popular even than her husband.
Late in the morning, President Ford conceded Carter's victory.
And when Gerald Ford lost to Jimmy Carter in the 1976 presidential election, she delivered the concession speech when he complained of laryngitis.
Let me call on the real spokesman for the family, Betty.
When they moved out of the White House, Gerald and Betty Ford retired to California, and it was here that her family realized, for all her openness, she was keeping one terrible secret: her growing addiction to painkillers and alcohol.
Were you an enabler, as they say?
I was a bad enabler. I made all kinds of excuses, made all kinds of alibis. That's a typical spouse's reaction.
By 1978, her addiction could no longer be ignored. Her family gathered at the Fords' retirement home in Palm Springs to push her to get treatment.
Fortunately, my family saw the problem, and they got professional help to come in and help them do what we refer to as an intervention.
With that help, she overcame her addiction and once again used her own experience to give to others.
They have to know that there is help available. There's not only help, but there's hope for them.
She helped found the Betty Ford Treatment Center. Well, it's become well known for celebrity rehab. Most of the 90,000 who've come through here are not famous.
I still get notes from women, and they thank me from the standpoint of making it okay to go for treatment.
Her last appearance was at President Ford's state funeral in 2006, saying goodbye to her husband of 58 years. She will be buried beside him at his presidential museum in Grand Rapids, Michigan. But Betty Ford's real monument will be her treatment center, where she's remembered as a woman who was strong enough to admit her weakness.